Good evening, citizens. My name is Ban Shattersong, captain, or well, former captain of the Bloody Hands Mercenary Company. And today I've got a very special guest with me to talk a bit more about Varushka and what it's like to be a warden. Sam, feel free to introduce yourself.
Hello. Yeah, I play Dubravka Nadyaovna Vanek Vesely, which is a very long Varushka name. Most people call her Du for short because it's easier to remember. Yeah, and I play a courage priest and a warden. So her archetype is warden, and most of what I do is synody things. And generally running around and getting stuck in and meddling.
Is that first of all, has anyone? Okay, first of all, I love that name. Can you just say it one more time?
Dubravka Nadyaovna Vanek Vesely.
It's so awesome. How did that? um, how did you come up with that?
The
That's
name?
yeah, the
Oh
name.
gosh, it's so there is a kind of a story. In Varushka, children are given the names of animals when they're kids. Because it's meant to protect them from the scary evil monsters, because names have power. So in my mind, because Dubravka is a changeling, I thought it would be funny if her child name was Doe. So I picked the name Dubravka, which is, I think, normally meant to be pronounced Dobravka, and then just had her personally insist that it was pronounced Dubravka and insist that her name was Du rather than Doe. Which is just like an inside joke that only I find funny. That's how I picked the name.
Fantastic. And has anybody got that name correct? Like actually on field? Because I can imagine like some Varushkans or members of your is Vale the right way to say a group? A group of Varushkans?
Yeah, yeah, we come from Vales. We have our various other groups inside of that. Everyone calls her Do because it's easier to remember. But in Varushka, we just call each other cousin if we forget each other's name.
Oh, even better. Oh, fantastic. So there's still a prize out there for someone getting that name correct and addressing you.
I have had some very sort of like vigilant people who will write down the name and then come out of it. So
Oh,
props to
nice.
them.
Oh, that's smart. Gosh, I wish I could write. Brilliant. So, first of all, thank you so much for coming on to talk to us. I would say me, but hopefully some people are listening to this, and I've been reliably informed by the internet that they do. So, oh, that was a terrible pun. Please forgive me. I've got a set of questions, and for those of you listening in who maybe here for the first time, the format of these episodes is I totally coerce a an Empire player from Anvil with cake, biscuits, and other bribes to come and spill the beans about a certain thing. And in this case, as Sam mentioned, it's around playing a warden in Varushka. And I've got a few questions here that I'm going to go through. Essentially, what's it like to be a warden? What do they do? So the idea is if you're interested in this part of the game, or Varushka in general maybe, then this is very relevant for you. If you're not thinking of playing in Varushka, um, change your mind.
Come to Varushka. It's the best nation.
I think there's a strong argument. I'm going to go immediately off piste, immediately, and actually ask, Ossium, reclaiming Ossium. So for you listening in at home, Varushka I think they're geographically the largest nation in the Empire now, and they are also the proud owner of the only barbarian territory to be captured since we've been playing the game. Is that correct?
Mm. Yeah, 5 territories, baby.
Nice. Um, has that meant anything for you at all as a character? And like, is it a big nation? Is it a big deal in the nation?
Oh, it's a huge deal in the nation. It's become a big talking point, especially because we now have characters who come from Ossium. And they have now a lot of game to do with religion and to do with politics. So like a member of my sect, his name is Vasily in character, was one of the priests who brought the way to Ossium, basically. So it's become like a big part of our game, like virtue in Ossium and preaching the way there. And my character has now become very sort of embroiled with Ossian politics, with Dawn and the Barons and how it all relates to each other. So there's just so much like rippling out from the Ossian game. It's really cool and fun.
Fantastic. And I know that the Sandfishers were like a local tribe of orc slaves under the Druge. Has that like come up at all in game as well? Because I think it was pre-pandemic. One of the battles actually had some Sandfisher orcs, actually on it, sort of running away from the Druge. Now I remember this because I was sat on the other side of the gate ready to go through, and we saw unarmed orcs in clothes, no armor, running towards Imperial lines, and then I think the Dornish cut them down,
Oh gosh.
assuming, perhaps wisely, but it was a trap. But has there
Yeah.
been that kind of like Sandfisher interaction on the field?
I mean, I haven't personally had much game or interactions with sandfishers, not in Varushka anyway. But yeah, I think this is another thing about how it just sort of like is rippling out everywhere. Just seems like Varushka now is very much like a topic for discussion because it just tends to branch out now with Ossian being this big like epicenter of game and drama. Um, yeah, eventually it'll get to us.
Fantastic. Yeah, I just that image of the image of the sandfishers getting cut down has stuck with me on a no C note for a while. You know, that moment when you realise that the Empire are maybe not the good guys in the setting.
Oh wait, we're the baddies.
Hands, oh, are we the baddies? But cool. So back on Peace. My first question, the first few, I apologize. I think you probably have had these questions a lot before, but the first one would be, you know, what is a warden?
Okay, yeah. So, to start the basics, for people who don't know anything about Varushka, Warden is kind of essentially how Varushkans are able to live and get by in their monster-filled nation. So there are these things called wolves and plague wolves, and there are all kinds of monsters that want to kill and eat you. So Varushkans have wards to keep homes and vales and roads safe. And wardens are the people whose job it is to ward and maintain wards. Um, but the idea is that every single Varushkan should know how to do it. Every single Varushkan will carry some kind of talisman or know how to
Hmm.
ward in a simple way. But wardens are the people who will step off the warded roads and make more roads and link up vales together. And if we didn't have wards and we didn't have wardens, then we would be a lot more isolated from each other. We wouldn't be able to cross the nation basically and really be a part of the empire. So yeah, it's kind of the like the motto in Varushka is to stay on the road because roads are warded and they're protected. You can't be hurt by monsters if you're on the road. And it's the warden's job, in theory, to step off of the road to make more roads, basically.
Awesome, because that's really I didn't actually know that because my yeah I've read the wiki in bits and bobs and not particularly well in some places clearly. So like my like the prevailing opinion on the field, if you're not a Varushkan player or really know anything about Varushka, is that wardens were monster hunters. But does that whilst that part I think is true, does it stem from actually stepping off those roads and going and hunting for new ones?
I think it's definitely sort of the main art uh it's the main picture of a warden that I think most people have. And obviously I think that definitely comes from like Geralt of Rivia and like the inspiration that's drawn from like the Witcher series. There is a lot that's clearly been inspired by the Witcher books in the Varushkan Brief.
Hmm.
But the monster hunting thing is this big part of the Warden brief, I think. It's not the only part of it, but I think it's sort of the most like obvious part of it. And there's like a big part on the wiki about the sort of company of the White Stag and changeling wardens in particular, who are a fellowship of wardens who go and concentrate on fighting monsters, because monsters are the things that are kept out by wards. So the way to sort of keep monsters away is to go out and kill more monsters.
It makes sense. You know, I often want to get rid of the cakes in my fridge, and eating them is the easiest way to do it. You know? Fantastic. So, so we had the little chat we had before recording this. There is a difference between what what a warden does in the fluff on the wiki and outside of Anvil versus what goes on inside Anvil. And I think one of the main things is that I think it even says it on the wiki, you can't have there's sort of 3,000 people potentially on the field. There's nowhere near enough resource to give you a solo quest to kill a monster. That just won't happen in playtime. And with that being a big part of the Varushkan brief, sorry, the Warden brief, what's it like actually on Anvil Field as a Warden when it comes to going after monsters or Griblies, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it is quite different to how the brief might sort of frame it on the wiki. It's not like entirely different. I would never say there's no chance of you going out to kill monsters. It's just that you probably won't have that Geralt of Rivia experience of going out on the solo mission to kill a monster. It's much more common that you will be part of a group or a fellowship or a bigger skirmish to go out and tackle this thing. But I think the sort of archetype of the Warden is very broad, and I think it overlaps a little bit with different archetypes that we have in Varushka. So we've got archetypes that are like your character is a group leader. So like we have Varushkan Boyars or like the Dawn Earls or the Wintermark Thanes. Or you have your character does magic in a very specific way, like the mountebanks in League who are street magicians, or like the mummers in the Marchers who do like theatrical magic. And they're very specific. And in Varushka, I find that there's a lot more overlap with the archetypes. And that's maybe for better or for worse. So we have a fighter archetype already with the Schlachter, and they're meant to be like the organized soldiers. We have magic user archetypes because we have Kabbalists and we have Volhovs, and they both do magic in different way. Like Cabals are ritual magic users, and Volhovs are people who sort of meddle with magic and they roam around Vales. We have wise ones, and they do like a lot of bargaining, and they might deal with problems without fighting them. They're trying to find threats. And a warden is kind of all of those things rolled up into one, so it can kind of make it feel directionless if you're quite new, I think, to Empire.
Uh-huh.
And I think, in my opinion anyway, it comes down to how you role play what the archetype means for your character. So, like, practically on the field, like, to answer the question, wardens are usually they're going to be the ones who get involved with monster quests, like skirmishes that involve monsters. And we'll get NPCs who come to the Varushkan camp and say, help, we've got a wolf in this part of Varushka and we need someone to come help us, or help, we have a sovereign that we need to deal with. And in Varushka, it's better to take a mixture of people. You might want Schlachter, who are the big people who are going to go and fight any threats, but you might also want wardens, and wardens who know how to deal with monsters. And in the field, it tends to be wardens, or the warden archetype, who are organizing skirmishes. They're taking a lead because that's what their character would do. They're people who are going to find a way to deal with the threat by getting together different skill sets and different people who can deal with it. I find that wardens also are the people who sort of wield the hearth magic quite strongly, and that's definitely how I've interpreted the brief. So we have stenza and storytellers who are important for telling stories, and that's a huge part of Varushka's brief. But we also have Warden as an actual part of our hearth magic, an actual magical thing that wardens can do. So Warden things like we ward the camp. So every night at Anvil, we come together to walk around the entirety of the Varushkan camp, and that
Awesome.
creates a half magic ward.
Is this with the would you ever put little posts in the ground? Because I see those in the actual rituals for warding areas against the like Navarre warding Valorn, for example. We put little posts with runes painted on them. Do you do the same?
Yeah, we have warden posts, and we do the half magic warden, which is us walking around the whole camp. And that is meant to be us invoking our hearth magic to build a wall around the camp. But we also have a warden, I've forgotten the name for it. Groups who do magic.
Oh, is it Covens?
The coven, yes.
Yeah, that's it.
I should know this because I'm part of the coven. We have specifically a warden coven. They're called the Heirs of the Canon, and they cast the warden rituals, which is like another part of sort of the warden ceremony that we do. So there's hold back frozen hunger, which mechanically wards against the undead. And there is no welcome here, which wards against Eternals and Heralds. So every night the Coven, the Heirs of Canon, will do that ritual as well to physically and magically make this barrier.
Oh, that's awesome. Something that came up at E3 was a tulpa. I actually ended up in the Varushkan camp to talk to one of your wise ones about them, actually. I had no idea you were warded at night, so I imagine that your players were probably spared that fate of their memories getting stolen at the last event.
So this is a very fun part, I think, of the Warden that a lot of people do tend to forget. And I think this is something that is very relevant to Warden players, and something that Warden players can take upon themselves to be an authority figure for. Wards exist, and they will keep out these things. The Tulpa couldn't get into the camp unless people invite things into the wards. So the ward only exists as this barrier because we have sort of created it so with our half magic, but you can still invite people in. So this has happened quite a few times where we've had Gribblies turn up outside the camp, and then unsuspecting people will say, "Why aren't you coming in? Just come into the hearthfire, come and get warm." And that invites the scary thing into the camp, and it's now here, and you can't do anything about that. So the wards exist as long as we sort of tell you that they exist and keep people out. So that is another warden responsibility in a way, where you will make sure that things that have been invited in haven't been invited in error, and checking if things seem awry. So we did have a couple of wardens who were heads on a swivel, making sure that the tulpa wasn't sort of killing people, basically.
Oh, fantastic! Because have you ever had a moment where you sort of sat by the hearth and maybe a less vigilant citizen has invited something in, and it's sort of, I can imagine the warden sort of diving across the fire, going no 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 no, and like hand across mouth, that kind of thing. Has that ever happened?
Oh yeah, yes, it happens frequently.
Oh.
We had Volodny turn up at the Varushkan Hearth. For people who don't know, the Volodny are a group of basically undead evil liches who sort of all cut their hearts out. I'm simplifying this, but they all cut their hearts out and made themselves evil and undead. And it's become a sort of long-standing goal for Varushka to hunt down the Volodny and kill them once and for all. Several Volodny have just turned up at the hearth fire talking to us and have had to be reckoned with.
Okay, I'll be careful, I guess. I just
It does tend to seem our egregores will keep a close watch, I think, on the vigilance of the Varushkins and the strength of our ward, and they will test it. They will test us, and they will test it quite frequently.
if let's say I'm Navari at the moment, and if I'm inside your camp, and if I invite a Griblian, can it still cross, or is it only if a Varushkan invites them in?
Yeah, it would be Varushkins as far as I'm aware, because Varushkins have created this ward.
Gotcha. Okay, so we can't totally screw your nation over. Not that we would
Not
try,
that I'm
but
aware of, although I don't think many people have tried, so maybe it's something to have a go at.
not deliberately. I'm playing I'm a nice person now. But if you told me there's two summits ago, that would have been a interesting tidbit. It's interesting what you said a little bit earlier actually about the like the Warden archetypes being quite, sorry, your Varushkan archetypes being quite broad and overlapping, because we actually have it's been a point of contention in the Navari Discord as well. Actually, we also have let's say quite a wide spread in terms of what our archetypes can do. It's like a Thorn is a fighter,
Hmm.
sort of like a dedicated fighter, a bit like a Schlachter, but anyone else can fight. There's no limit on it, and anyone else can dress up in lots of chainmail with a spear and look like one, but not be one. Same with like brands, our leaders. They can also be thorns. They can be brokers as well, which is our traders. So it kind of all melts together, and I think it's pretty good when you're new, that essentially whatever you do is correct, because let's say I'm a I want to be a trader, a Navari trader. I'm a broker, but I also go out and fight on the battlefield. I don't need to also say I'm a thorn. I can just go off and fight as a broker. So it's pretty cool. But as we go like deeper into the nation, we've we've had some not problems, but like there's been a lot of talk about like which group of people, which group of players and archetypes get to decide certain things.
Hmm.
Especially when you can have Vates for, or also combat mage. Vates are our mages, and you can have combat mages that might also sit in Thorn's Council, because Thorn's Council is our military bloc that makes decisions around generals, for example. But it's not limited to Thorns. It's just Thorns and those who fight for the nation, which is pretty much everybody. So they kind of, I know what you mean when you say they kind of overlap a bit. Have you found that a problem with like other archetypes kind of stepping on the toes of Wardens?
Yeah, I think the main thing for every archetype is that choosing an archetype isn't going to give you necessarily a specific direction to go in. It's going to help inform what your character might put themselves forward to pursue. Um, so with Wardens as an archetype, on an OC level, I found that some people, or just like the general feeling of the player base, is that it isn't specific enough, and it doesn't feel like it has much direction in the field. I've always found that my character and the archetype, it sort of just informs how she responds to things, and what her goals will be and what she actually wants to achieve, rather than say giving me a roadmap for the game that I'm going to pursue. But specifically for Wardens, because it feels like it's such a ubiquitous thing to be in Varushka, it feels like, well, everyone is a Warden, really, if we're all Warden. It's like, how do I make myself feel distinct, and how do I make this part of my character, in the way that I might if I'm a Boyar or if I'm a Volhov, and I can say that's really something distinct about my character and helps me conceptualize them. Um, I find that people like actually on the field are trying in character to really shape what it means to be an Anvil Warden, rather than just I'm a Warden. Hi, I'm here to kill monsters. saying, I've come from Varushka all the way down here to Anvil for a reason. And because I'm here and I'm meeting all of you Varushkans, what are we going to do together as wardens for the Empire, rather than just what are we going to do as my day job? Because my day job as a warden is in my Vale. It's very specific to my Vale and very specific to my tiny little home that needs protection. And if I'm leaving my home that is presumably well protected now because I've been doing my job,
Mhm.
what am I going to go do with all of the other wardens? What has drawn me here and what is making me actually want to come? And I feel like it's still sort of evolving in that way and still trying to find, like, what are we going to do together as wardens? And it's led into things like the monster hunter group that has appeared on the field, where people are
Oh
trying
yes,
to,
I've seen them. Yeah.
yeah, they're like cataloging and like making notes of all of the actual monsters rather than the barbarians. So trying to keep a record of that for reference. So if people are like, "Oh gosh, oh no, it's a frost giant. How do we deal with that?" They go to these monster hunters and say, "Do you have the records on this?" And they say, "Yes, of course we do. We're professional monster hunters." So that is one thing that Wardens got really involved in because it's meant to be the Warden deal.
Fantastic. Okay. Is that actually my next question was going to be, what made you want to be a warden in the first place? Is that something that pulls you towards it? The kind of, right, I've done my day job, in the sort of below the abstraction layer, but now I'm in Anvil. What's the big impact I can make? Or was it something totally different?
Yeah, kinda, I guess. Because this is my first character, like, at Empire and at LARP, just in general. Like, Empire was my first LARP.
Oh wow, can we
Um,
get a round of applause in chat? I'll give one for all of you. Um, yeah, first character,
uh,
OG, fantastic.
um, but yeah, so I came to the field, my first ever event as a baby, and Dew's resource was a farm, and her whole thing was meant to be, I'm a changeling, and my mother doesn't want me to be a warden because my capricious father was a changeling warden, and oh dear, it's far too dangerous. And a series of like battles that killed half of the people in our group led to us thinking about where we wanted to go with the characters, and we thought, okay, if half of the people are dead, we'll up and leave from our veil. We'll say that it got overrun and we need to go find somewhere else to stay. We moved to a new veil. We sort of wrote what that actually would entail, and we needed to ward it. So do whole sort of arc became, okay, I'm going to sort of grow up now and just do the job that needs to be done. And her becoming a warden coincided with her becoming a courage and saying, I've got a hard thing in front of me and I need to go and do it and I need to face it. So her being a warden is very tied to her being a courage priest and sort of inspiring people and talking to people about going and doing things, going and facing the monster or facing the unwarded road and just getting it done.
That's such a when you said baby, my sorry, my mind immediately flashed to like an actual like a 2-year-old but with a little helmet and a bow, but clearly not the case.
Not far off of a Rushkin child, but they'll be holding a little bell and a little talisman.
It's kind of like the Disney version of Hercules. When he's a baby fighting off the snakes, I could just imagine that. It's like, yep, you're a warden. So how many wardens are there ish in Varushka? Because the again from like a Navari point of view, we're quite a big nation. We've got like a few hundred people. We've always seen Varushka as quite small, and if I had to pick a
Mm.
number off the top of my head, it's like 50 people. Um, there was always a joke that Urizen had 3 left, but I know they've recently had an influx of players, and they've got like over 100 now, which is incredible and cool to see. Um, is that true? Like, is Varushka around about the 50 mark, or is it actually larger than people give it credit for?
It's definitely larger. It's grown as well, like Urizen. it definitely feels like we've had an influx of new players as well, especially after the longest dark. But yeah, it's grown, and I think there's as a Varushkan, I think you feel the numbers a lot more because a lot of Varushkans will be, surprise, surprise, in the Varushkan camp. And there's a lot of game that comes to the Varushkan camp. I think I don't really have a great idea of what the national game looks like for other people. Like, I don't know how much game comes to people's camps specifically, because it feels like in Varushka, we all have like these little things that are very specific to the nation. So we're interacting with each other quite a lot and having a lot of discussions around the Hearthfire or in the Boyars meeting or in the National Assembly, which is our religious like assembly for synod. And there's lots of sort of inter-nation stuff happening. So to me, it feels like Varushka has grown really, really huge. But I know compared to Navarre, it's quite small. It does still feel like a small nation compared to the others.
Okay, and it's so in like for us, essentially when people join, we'll say, you know, here's a sword. You know, you're a thorn for your first event. Um, do the reason I'm not so certain of like which archetype to pick for say like a new player in Varushka, because on one hand I feel like the Slacta are, am I saying that right? Schlacta? I can never get it right.
Schlachter, yeah.
Oh, nailed it. Nice. Schlacta. Um, I've seen a few of them rocking around in like the really cool scale armor, the plumed
Mm.
helmets and everything. Um, and I've also seen sort of, you know, some Varushkans running around with those big like bardishas, like the two like the big double-handed axes and stuff. But do new
Oh yeah.
players generally lean towards Warden because of, you know, it's, you know, clearly Witcher inspired and that's really cool. Um, you know, you don't need a, well, at least from the images I've seen on the wiki, you don't need like a big suit of plate armor to, you know, to be one as well. Is it quite popular for new players?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that is one thing about being a warden is that you absolutely don't have to be a fighty type to be a warden, and that's quite written into the brief. I think you can be an artisan who makes magical items because that is one of the sort of big things that wardens do is provide these protections and these talismans. You could be someone who does just exclusively like ritual magic and be a warden. You could be someone who sort of leads your veil and be a warden. It's quite easy to sort of, like I said before, it's quite a broad archetype. Almost everyone in Varushka could be a warden. So it is quite appealing, I think, to think, oh, I could sort of do a quite a wide range of things and be this archetype. Or I can just focus on fighting and be this archetype. It's got universal.
Nice. Does it have any? So for the you know, poly, I like. I'm not a fighty character anymore, but I mean, it's part of who I am now, and certainly was when I was first new to Anvil. Are there any like weapons that are like associated with the fighty type of warden? Because the I've seen a lot of what comes to mind is like medium leather armor and a pair of swords, or is it
Yeah.
pretty much personal flavor?
Yeah. Honestly, I do think it is like this personal flavor thing. Obviously, it's play what you find fun to play. I the brief for Varushka and weapons is typically, especially for wardens, is typically you have a tool that you can also use as a weapon. So a lot of wardens will have axes, and the axe is kind of the archetypal like Varushkan weapon. My character uses a sword and a shield. Because I think that's cool. And I like
Can
it.
agree, it is.
um, but a lot of people as well will use sort of the two-handed weapons. We sort of have, I think, more two-handers than anything else in the nation. We have far fewer shields um, than anything else. But yeah, we don't really have like looking at like the people who take the field, we don't have a lot of like ambi people who use two swords as cool as it is. And we have far fewer next to zero archers as well. That's really not a big thing in Varushka.
Ah, interesting. Is there any lore behind it? Sort of not using sort of bows and crossbows, or is it just a coincidence? Do you think?
I think it's mostly a coincidence. We do have, like, we have some people who take the field and use a bow, but I think it is really the law of numbers. And most people will have access to particular weapons. I know Navarre has so very many archers, which is very cool. It's just I think we yeah, we don't have the numbers for it.
Interesting. I mean, it's totally a loaded question. I like my bow, and my when I inevitably die sooner rather than later, um, I was strongly looking at playing a Varushkan Warden. So this episode is, whilst very interesting, is also totally in my own self-interest. That's good to
Me
know,
just
actually.
telling you to come, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, hey, I'm not even recording at this point. This is just a chat. But um, on the topic of like weaponry and sorry, maybe not weaponry, but like the maybe going back to the Griblies actually. What's your? It's kind of two questions. What's the best monster you've ever slain? Or like the most fearsome, or however you want to quantify it. But then also, what's your favorite monster in the setting?
Ooh. Ooh, that's a hard one. There's so many cool things. Obviously, the war rhinos are. I just need to shout those out.
Oh
They
yeah, they're
rule.
great.
They rule. They're very cool. Um. Oh gosh. Okay, so one monster I particularly love are the husks. I think they're great, and I think they're very atmospheric, especially when you go out to face them. They don't tend to happen much in like the big pitched battles, but I think one of my favorite ever sort of battles things I've done as a warden specifically was E2 this year. We went out on an encounter, a skirmish, to ward a road in Varushka. So we had someone who came to our camp and was like, "You need to help us. There's a bunch of white stag who are trapped in Mikarova, in Mechenya specifically, which was a territory that was the territory that was ceded to Thule at E1. So we had this sort of moral dilemma of we can go and help these white stag, but we also have this opportunity to sort of ruin the road further and make the Thul's job a lot harder in this sort of territory because they won't be able to get past the monsters. So we basically be really sticking it to the Thul.
Uh-huh.
But we get there through the Sentinel Gate and we come to the forest in Mikarova, and we get to this road and we see that it's a lot different than what we anticipated. The road is completely broken already, and there are all of these like talismans hanging there, and they're all broken. And we have this horde of zombies come to us, and we have to sort of like cut our way through, like Day of the Dead style.
Oh, nice.
They're just terrifying, terrifying things. And I just always found them really cool. I think it's a part of my character's like tragic backstory because the previously mentioned Vale, like a overrun, was from Husk. So her whole thing has been like, I will face undead and I will not flinch. So I just personally really like it. And the husks in the setting. I think they're horrible. They're an affront to virtue, and the labyrinth scary, and the skirmish team who play them are always putting in like such great roleplay. I've always just loved them. I think they're so cool.
Oh, so these are to clarify, these are like normal husks as opposed to Verlawn husks.
Yeah, yeah, completely normal husks. So they would like they were repeating the things that we said. They were acting as Varushkan Schlachter, so they had all these hero calls and stuff. And they would talk to us like, "Do you want hospitality?" They'd say the traditional Varushkan things. I was like, it's so unnerving and horrible.
Oh gosh. Oh, sorry. I think I know what you mean. I think I've actually come across. Oh god, it was a while back, but squeezed on a skirmish like this where they would say things like "help, help,
Yeah,
help, help" as it got closer, and
yeah.
yeah, that. Oh yeah, that was. Oh yeah, goosebumps, goosebumps. Still, yep, yep. I know what you mean. That's freaky. That's freaky stuff. They're great.
it's proper nightmare fuel.
Yeah, yeah, nightmare
But
fuel.
I think the best thing that we didn't kill, because you're not meant to kill these things, but we went on a skirmish to face a sovereign before, and this was a sovereign that like particularly hated changelings, so I had to like Twilight Masquerade and everything to get to it. Um, but yeah, I quite like the monsters that you're not supposed to kill. The ones that if you even try to kill them, then you will suffer a fate worse than death.
Oh,
So
okay.
you're meant to bargain with them or make a deal or something horrible. That's always really nasty and fun.
Nice. So these the sovereigns are like the giga monsters, aren't they? Because you got wolves for like a husk would be a wolf, and then a sovereign would be a I have no idea, a Death Star laser equivalent, basically.
Yeah, the sovereigns are a big part of the Varushkan brief. They're sort of the I guess the explanations in the title there, they're the thing that is in the land, and that is their land. This is their domain. So if you're going to live in a sovereign's domain, you need to make some kind of accord with the sovereign and make sure it doesn't kill everyone. And sovereigns will usually have wolves that serve them, so lesser monsters. And sovereigns are very broad and ill-defined as well because they can really be anything. It's one of those things where it's like if you say something is a sovereign, it's a sovereign. And the stories that you tell have power, and they will imbue the sovereign with its sovereignty.
Gotcha. So could Facebook be a sovereign?
Oh God, the
Uh,
worst of all.
just as you were saying that, I was looking at my webcam and I was like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, that could work. That's really interesting actually because I didn't realize that the wolves would be subservient to a local sovereign. I thought so that Gribblies in general were quite individual, and others might control lessers, but that's interesting that the wolves actually serve the sovereign. That's kind of cool actually.
Yeah, it's a fun one. It's like again one of those things where it's like, oh, it could be different depending on the veil. Every veil's different, but it's one of the cool things I like about the brief. Like this giga monster that controls the minions and the little servants beneath it.
I'm imagining a rat king with loads of rats. But anyway, moving swiftly on from my obsession with rats. Varushkan accents. Uh, Earlier when you said Dubravka's full name, there was a little bit of it in there. Um, what's it like? I mean, first of all, do you keep an accent when you play?
It's hard to say really. I find that there is sort of a Varushkin lilt that may or may not appear for certain words, especially for names. But generally, I find the camp has uh, started to move away from the accents and doing any kind of accent.
Okay, fantastic. And with the because like the stereotype is it's got like Russian Slavic influences. Did that go away because they're frankly they're quite hard to keep up for a whole weekend, especially when the my assumption is the majority of players in Anvil are English because it's a UK LARP.
Mm.
Or was there anything where like they said, well, actually, you've got different territories, accents wouldn't really be uniform across all of them?
I think it's a mix of things. I think there is sort of this because I wouldn't say it is if anyone's doing any kind of accent, I wouldn't say it is specifically drawing from any kind of real world place. It's kind of this amalgamation of different accents, Eastern European accents, to come together for like this Varushkan accent. But I think most people have dropped it because there have been people who said that they don't like the accent or that the accent um sort of offends them in some way,
Gotcha.
and sort of out of respect for anyone who might be upset by it, the accent has kind of been dropped. But like that being said, there have of course been well, what I've seen, there have been people who have these accents, like have Eastern European accents, who have said, "Hey, I would love to come to Varushka because it draws from Eastern European culture and folklore and all of this, and have therefore come to the nation because of its ties to these culture." So I wouldn't say there's no accent whatsoever because it come with their own. They have their own. But generally, I feel like, as with most of the accents on the field, even I suppose some of the Marcher accents I've seen people say they don't really like that. Most people just sort of seeming to phase it out.
Oh, that's good to know actually. Because I think you were quite polite there, where you said, oh, the Varushkan accent is an amalgamation of different Eastern European accents. But if my impressions of accents are anything to go by, it's because they're bad, rather than
Yeah,
accurate to any location.
but because you're Navari, I'm I'm Welsh, and I hear the Welsh accent in Navarre quite a lot, and I always find it charming to hear people putting on the Welsh accent. Obviously, I don't have a very thick Um, but yeah, I've always found that person who's like seeing people who don't have a Welsh accent putting on the Welsh accent. I've always thought, oh, that's adorable. But yeah, but honestly, I think it's a case of one singular person is upset by something that is so easily not done as an accent, then it's quite easy for us all to not do it.
Yeah, exactly. We're not here to dick with each other's fun. We're here to
Yeah.
kill plague wolves and drink ale. Alrighty. The next question is actually around. You mentioned change things a lot. I mean,
It's because I play a changeling.
but are there any Because in the VAR we used to have a really strong thing against briars that's kind of been
Mm.
dulled down now. Is there something similar in Varushka where you've got distrust towards certain lineages?
I find it doesn't manifest very much on the field. But I think there are people who definitely willing to sort of ham up the if you're a changeling and you're a warden, then you're probably part of the company of the White Stag, and that means you're going to be really reckless. You're not going to abide by the rules. You're a disaster waiting to happen. And that's always very fun. I find like my sect members, the people in my group, will be willing to sort of indulge the "you're out of control" roleplay. But as a whole, the Varushkan camp isn't really prejudiced towards any particular lineage. Um, but like that being said, I think it's quite easy to sort of ham up the changeling warden thing, and sort of come in, announce yourself as the best monster hunter that Varushka will ever see, and you will get a swarm of people coming to you and be like, "You are foolish. You don't know what you're doing," and they'll play along with you.
Fantastic. That we had That's good because we had obviously with the briar thing being dulled down, there's been less of it now, but there wasn't really much of it to begin with. Surprisingly, it only manifested itself often at elections. So,
Mm.
any briar running around, whatever, we might, if they were doing something particularly stupid, or if Empire's a political PvP LARP, right? If they were your opponent in any way, you would just pick on them for it. But otherwise, it didn't really crop up too often. Um, that's cool. It's cool, but like Chainlink's got that. Is it almost like I'm always getting like a Top Gun feel from it? You're a
Oh,
change thing. You're
yeah.
taking off your aviators after having
Yes.
just crashed a $70 million jet into the sea or something, and the rest of the crew are like, "What are you doing?"
It's a 20 throne wagon. What are you doing? Yeah, it's absolutely that.
Oh yeah, that is actually one of my Oh no, that's not true. I've got a handful more. Um, the on-field impression is that Varushka is very wealthy, particularly around your mines as well. Um, as being a destitute Navari Thorn, having a crown to your name is a lot. However, like you said, that's a 20 Wayne carriage and stuff like that. Is it true that Varushkan members are pretty baller most of the time?
Well, I wouldn't know anything about this as a lowly priest who gets by on my, what is it, 18 rings.
Oh yeah,
But generally, the individual Varushkan is not like extraordinarily rich. I would say that there's wealth in particular groups, but not every Varushkan is extremely balling.
gotcha. That's a shame. I was hoping a character switch over might save my money woes.
Yeah,
And
you come to Varushka and they hand you 5 wains of white granite.
damn, it's got like a sort of what was it? Is it again my timeline wrong? But 1800s, 1900s or so. Come to New York, the streets are paved with gold, and instead they're covered in rats.
Rats again.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've got several sort of national boar seats, which of course is going to turn people's heads for the wealth.
Hmm,
But it's about who has those boar seats, rather than necessarily every single person has riches.
gotcha. Okay, that's it's kind of similar in Navarre. We don't have many national seats, but it's quite upsetting. But yeah, we have the people who do hold them are pretty wealthy, and the rest of us are not. We actually have a I think it's called Brock's Toll. It's a toll bridge in a Navari territory, but Navarre don't own it. The owner is either a Marcher or a Dornish citizen, and it's decided by a fight in the Glory Square. And like Navarre show up like, oh wow, isn't this fun? And
Can
I'm
you just
obviously
sort of
upset there,
like
like we're mugs. Why? Why is this not ours? It's ours. Like, please, why can't we have this?
maybe you should just throw your sort of gauntlet in there. Just turn up with 2 swords and say you're going to fight for it.
Yeah, I'm the best Brock's Toll Warden you'll ever see, as my pointy ears appear from my hair and twin swords and the white stags stenciled on my chest or something. You know,
If you want it hard enough, you'll fight for it.
Oh, all right. Okay, so I try and use a quote from the episode as the episode title. That's a good one. If you want it hard enough, so if you want it hard enough, you'll fight
You'll
for it.
fight for it.
Brilliant. Okie doke. Hmm. I guess like the final section for me was actually you talked a bit about the courage priest and sort of facing those husks, facing the really scary nightmare fuel stuff and encouraging others to do so. Beyond priesting and warding, what else do you get up to in Anvil? What are your typical weekend antics that you can tell me about? Keep
Oh
the
God.
secrets.
Yeah, I mean, lots of things. Lots and lots of things. There's obviously sort of a lot of national game, like I mentioned. It seems like always sort of just like flitting about, poking nose in these different things that are coming to Varushka. I do a lot of synod stuff that's sort of taken up a lot of my time, which is talking to other priests about things and matters of virtue, going and voting in synod. But my character has also been involved a lot in sort of like fighting, skirmishes, military stuff. So she's been sort of around military council and going off into sort of fights and getting involved with all of that. I do a lot of skirmishes and fighting as my character. I find that very fun, big part of her. But yeah, as a Varushkan like priest as well, a lot of her game is like storytelling as well. So I tend to try and like write stories as the character, and when I'm not fighting, then I'll be around and talking to people about virtue and courage and all of that. just all of the interpersonal drama as well that comes from being a dramatic role player. That's what really gets to me at Laugh. It's just sort of like character drama.
Have you got any spicy character drama from E3 you can share?
Oh gosh. Oh gosh, so much.
Great
It's just
beginning.
so like, oh man. Because like last year was like a big sort of character thing because my character got married. And she had sort of been avoiding all of her feelings, and she was in love with her boyar of her veil. And the boyar was also a player character, played by my actual girl.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, so the
It's hard
boyar
it's
is,
hard to romance an NPC that's not on the field. Just all this
yeah,
love letters going out your
right.
tent
Like,
on
I'm just
these
sitting there in the
birds.
corner, like I wish she loved. Uh, but yeah, the boyar is like the leader, and she's like there for the people, and Do is like, I'm just a distraction for her. It'll never work. I have to be her warden. I have to keep her safe. It's the courageous thing for me to do if I bottle my feelings and never talk about it and don't be a distraction, and just a lot of ball gowning, and like the courageous thing to do is actually to face your feelings and actually admit that you're in love. Yeah, all of that tropey stuff that I love. Um, yeah, and that ended up with them getting married at E4 before the longest dark. Yeah, that was one of the more dramatic things. But at E3, I was doing a lot of I became the state sort of assigned therapist for a member of my sect
Oh, okay.
because she had posted up a statement in Synod which talked about fear being the end goal of vigilance. She's a vigilance priest, of course, and a lot of people took a lot of umbrage with this and demanded that we inquisit her and talk to her about this. And the Inquisition ended with her penance was she needed to get a courage priest sort of guidance. So as the member of her sect, I became the guidance priest for this. And it was there's a lot of sort of like talking about trauma and what has led to sort of fear and vigilance and the crossover between fear, vigilance, courage, just all of that. I'm talking about this in a very vague way, but yeah, general feelings, angst, all of that.
Oh, that's really nice. I feel like that's actually a really interesting area of role play to explore because one of the guys in our not in our striding, but we have like larger groups called Thornborns. It's like a group of stridings basically, which are our like individual national unit of people, kind of like a Vale equivalent. They he was talking about like in comparison to like a Roman legionnaire who might see one, maybe two or three major battles at the height of the Roman Empire, and sort of like the combat stress of that, versus an imperial citizen who, if you're on the
Mm,
siege of Holberg, for example, or the skirmishes we do on a not just daily basis but hourly basis at some points
yeah.
in Anvil. We're all big damn heroes, right? So we're courageous and we can take it, but it's something me and actually a few others I've run into have been exploring a little bit more, especially with my new character, is around that fear of death and um, sort of the things we see as heroes of the Empire. How have you found that sort of consoling somebody and um, helping them overcome those kind of fears?
Oh gosh, it's a thing that has come up quite a lot because I play a courage priest. So sort of people be like, talk to me about the courage of the battle, or like how can I use courage right now to sort of get me through this. And it's really can be heavy role play, but I find it really fun and interesting to get into that, especially through the lens of the empire's theology and like how religion is it's so very different, like how it's written, and exploring how it's written as a way to sort of cope with these awful things, and how it is like it is a religion. It's faith based for the most part. None of it is necessarily explicitly proven. So Yeah, I find that a really fun part of the character. And like I said, I've had a lot of like my friends who have played like members of my group who have gone to battle and died, and then you have to role play being in grief. But like I generally find that to be quite fun. I
Oh
know
yeah.
it's not for everyone.
Yeah, it's sad role play is like you said, some people it's people don't want to go laugh and be sad, right? That sucks. We're here to kill husks and drink ale, but
Yeah.
but I totally agree with you, and I know what you mean with the grief side of it as well. I'm I come to laugh for the emotional extremes you don't get in day-to-day life. Um,
Yeah.
and having someone genuinely lose a friend, you've got the wonderful safety net of your OC, your friend's fine, but I see that you've had that kind of loss and that uh, those kind of strong feelings and almost the adrenaline that comes from it as well, or like the desire for revenge as well.
Oh yeah.
Wonderful
Like
stuff.
at E1, it's our Festival of the Loom where we sort of remember the dead people. Basically, it's similar to the High Guard one that happens at the same time, but we sort of stand around and sing songs, and we weave a loom, like a physical loom.
Uh-huh.
What happened at E1 is we ended up having to destroy the loom because of the aforementioned Volodny. Lots of shenanigans. But the main thing was that we messed with our hearth magic, and that made a curse happen on everyone in Varushka in Anvil. So on Sunday, everyone in the Varushkan camp was given a little slip from a referee that said that we were cursed and that we could all see our dead friends and family.
Oh
So
no.
everyone in the camp was role playing being distraught or just being sort of elated that they could see these people who they loved. And as a priest and as a courage priest, I was going around and having to exorcise people, and ended up doing maybe like 20, 30 exorcisms and was just being handed Liao. But having to talk to every single person and talk about this exorcism and talking to people who couldn't hear you. They were too busy talking to these people that were lost and they hadn't seen in so long. It was heartbreaking. I was in tears. It was so like emotional, OC and icy. I loved it. I thought it was amazing. But everyone was like fully committed to that role play. It was crazy.
Oh, that sounds absolutely brutal, but wow. What? Wow. Yeah, that was at E1.
Yeah, I think that was the one.
Oh,
Yeah.
damn, I missed out. Oh, that sounds so cool. What a what way for PD to react as well? Like, ha 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 ha, everyone's
I
getting cursed.
know.
I can imagine them rubbing their rat paws together and going, ha ha ha, let's cause some chaos. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I think our egregores are very on it if we break our hearth magic. They really pay attention to it.
Oh, fantastic. I've got a big smile on my face at the moment. That is so cool. Um, I am aware I've pinned you down for an hour, 3 minutes and 29 seconds. So I guess I'll go straight to my final question, and you'll hate to hear it. It's kind of three questions in one. Um, it's it's have you got any top tips for new LARPers, new Varushkans, or new Wardens from your experience of being good at the game and keeping your character alive this entire time?
Well, I don't know if I'm good at the game.
Better than
I'm
me.
still alive. um, New LARPers to Empire. I think the biggest learning curve for me was yes, you can go and talk to anyone. Yes, anyone will talk to you back. I know the social anxiety is a very hard thing to overcome, but game will come to you when you talk to people. And no matter what part of the game you're in, if you go and talk, you will generate some game. If you don't talk to anyone, then the game will always seem quite impenetrable. Um, and I don't particularly have any like big hats or anything like that in Empire, but I have a lot of fun at events because I just go around and just get involved. And I think, yeah, at Empire, you can definitely rely on the egregores as well, especially, I'm talking from a Varushkan perspective. Like, our egregores are such fantastic players and people, and they're just always ready to sort of drop everything and help you and get you involved in game. Um, for new Varushkans, come to the nation, sit around the hearthfire, and people will talk to you. People will get involved with you and will start to involve you in their little shenanigans. Um, for new wardens, I think it's very similar. Come to Varushka. Come talk to me. I I have a long blonde wig. I'm a change, and sort of standing up and saying, "Hi, I'm a warden." And we can talk about like what you do as a warden and what it means to your character, and figure out how you go forward on the field and do it. And that's kind of, I think, what we're all trying to do as wardens and as Varushkans. It's a very sort of closely knit nation, and we're sort of trying to help each other out.
Fantastic. And I just to add on the finding you part for being a warden, um, I think I've seen around some photos with you've got like almost silver swirls on your skin. Is that changing lineage or is that something else that I don't understand?
The white spirals are her changeling. Her changeling lineage. She's meant to be really high lineage, so she's got like the big blonde hair, antlers, and spirals everywhere.
But that, yeah, they do look absolutely sick. They're pretty cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I mean, Sam, thank you so much. You've hit the 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 55 second mark.
Oh
Um,
God, you've heard me talk for that long.
no, I've
Sorry.
been listening. I've been sat here listening, taking notes. This has been so informative, and it's been really interesting to listen to. And I love I love all these chats I have with players in other places because I've only played Navarre, and all the stuff is of course not on the wiki, and it gives us that little hit of
Hmm.
Anvil fun when we're not on the field. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to come on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Have you got any parting shots for the people listening in? As rude as you
Come
want
to
to be.
Varushka. We're not as scary and horrible as we seem. We're really lovely and nice. Want to eat you.
Well, there you have it, folks. We're not going to eat you. Underscore Varushkan, what is it now? Summer 384.
Hmm. We're going into autumn.
Oh, yes. Only 3.5 weeks left to go.
Oh gosh.
Oh, gosh, indeed. On that note, listeners, until next time, stay safe, keep your weapons close, and stay on the roads.